This is Management 1600, Chapter 7 from the book MGT 7. In this chapter we're talking about innovation and change. One of the things that I do is practice environmental scanning in the field of education or in the industry of education. So what things are changing out there that will impact the way I teach or how I can teach. From this slide you're seeing a couple different new emerging technologies. On the left you see what we call a forearm monitor. If you put your hand over your forearm and you move your fingers and your hand and your wrist, every movement is picked up in your forearm. We now have the technology to sense those movements, digitize them. In essence, you can have a virtual keyboard wherever you are as long as you have forearm monitors. Now the interesting thing is our body acts as a circuit. We can communicate electronically through our body to other devices. So if I have two forearm monitors, and then I have what we see on the right. The forearm monitors won't just be forearm monitors, but they'll also be computers. And those will interface to what we have on the right, which are Google contacts. That can project a 3D image for your eyes only. 3D, 2D, whatever you need. So it's interfacing with your forearms, and you have a virtual computer that no one can see but you. When you're at work, when you're in the classroom, wherever you are, when you're waiting for a bus, you can be doing your work, accessing information, chatting with your friends, probably not FaceTiming, but you definitely can do many things that you can't do right now. Now, why does that matter to me as an educator? Well, the idea that I need you to memorize anything seems a little bit irrelevant, because if you don't know a term or you don't recognize a term, you can always just look it up. And I might not know that you're looking it up. No one needs to know that you're looking it up. The idea, we need to move past this idea of rote memorization and move to the place where you need to recognize your gap in knowledge, figure out what you need to fill that gap, find a reliable source to give you that information, and then it's a lot of critical thinking where I'm matching ideas and concepts with other ideas and concepts. That's part of that gap analysis. So rote memorization isn't something that we really need to focus on. We need to expose you to terms and concepts so that when you're trying to do that gap analysis, it's easier for you. From an educator's perspective, how do we incorporate laptops and tablets and that type of information that you have access to, or those type of tools that you now have access to that you use in the workplace on a regular basis? How do we incorporate those in the classroom so you can learn how to use them not only in the classroom but in the work environment? So we're learning how to do that now. What we're looking forward in the future to doing is how do we incorporate Google contacts and these forearm monitors, or a digitally enhanced human. How do we interact with the digitally enhanced human in such a way to make them more capable students, people, contributors to society, and potential employees and employers? Before we go on, we want to look at the nature of new technology and how new technology is introduced and grows in our society. We have this thing we call an S-curve, or an S-curve of growth of technology. The first part of a technology introduction is depicted by really slow growth. So we have a new item, it doesn't really matter what it is, maybe it's the cell phone. So we have a cell phone that was created by Motorola, and at first we don't have a lot of improvements. This huge stick on a brick. It doesn't have a lot of battery capacity, it doesn't have a lot of range, its usages are limited, and we have this really slow growth. Now, as other people see the potential of the cell phone, a lot of people start entering that market, and there starts to be more competition, more money going into the technology, and we see a large amount of improvement or development in that technology. So you'll see a huge growth in that technology improvement, and once it peaks, you kind of get this leveling out. And as it levels out, we see like the limitations of the technology, and not as many people are investing because it takes a lot more money and effort to get a small gain in performance. And so this S-curve develops. And about that time when the technology is petering out, and people are used to this growth in performance, and now we're not getting that growth in performance, that allows this window of opportunity for new technology to come in and start replacing the old technology. So that's why we call it an S-curve. If you think about, say, flat panel TVs or the TV, right? We have the old tube TVs. They got bigger and bigger, and they eventually reached the limitations of the technology. And then we started getting plasma and flat panel TVs. And we get sharper and sharper pictures. We're using more digital feeds, and we get an enhanced picture. And now, after a certain period of growth, now we're getting really incremental growth. We might get a bigger tube size. I think they're like 80 inches now, but not a huge amount of growth in this technology. And so I think, as far as this flat panel TV, I think we might be on the end of the technological cycle, and now we have room or an opportunity for some new technology to come in and replace the flat panel TV. So we know that innovation can help us compete better. Sustained innovation streams or continuous innovation can give us competitive advantage over everyone. So we're looking at what is an innovation stream. So the first step is at the top. We have this technological discontinuity. It's a phase in which we recognize that there's a new technology that can be applied in the market. We have VHS players. Those lasted for a while, and now all of a sudden we have the ability to take media, take movies, and make them digital. It gives us a clear, crisp picture, and we can also embed audio that's clear and crisp. So we have a much better picture and sound quality from these digital media versus the analog media. And if you remember, they had these laser disc players, huge things, very expensive, but that was the way things were moving. And then we get this discontinuous change phase where we have competition and we have rivals of platforms. So laser discs started phasing out because they're too cumbersome, too expensive, and they never really overcame VHS. But then we get this thing called Blu-ray and HD format, and they start competing head to head. It's trying to figure out who's going to be the main standard of digital entertainment. And I remember Sony was backing Blu-ray and Microsoft was backing HD. I bet on Microsoft. I lost. I think what happened, well, Blu-ray was a better standard, or was a better product. Disney recognized it and said, hey, we're going to be using Blu-ray and we're going to convert all of our analog into Blu-ray digital. And that was it for HD format. So Blu-ray is the winner, and that's the dominant design, when a design or process becomes accepted as a standard. Now everything that's a digital format is usually a Blu-ray format if we're trading in discs, right? And then we get into this phase of incremental change where we're still looking at the digital formats, and with the standards of Blu-ray, and we have a lot of different Blu-ray players, and they become better, but it's like at the tail end of the S, right? We have a lot of progress, and now we're kind of making that curve into the tail end. So that's the innovation stream cycle. And then this can repeat and repeat and repeat. If we keep on it, we can be more competitive in the marketplace. So, as we talked about in the previous slide, the third step in the innovation cycle is the emergence of a dominant design. When that happens, when Blu-ray becomes the standard, what happens to our HD players? Well, they experience something called technological lockout. It's very hard after a dominant design comes through. If you're not that dominant design to sell your product. So HD and those companies that promoted or invested a lot in the research and development of HD also couldn't sell their products.
How do we manage
engineering
innovation?
costs?
So one of the things that we do is we
called
anticipate
technological
and try to
lockout.
survive.
So part of our job as managers is anticipating the changes in technology, so we can change, or so we can survive, and also so we can take advantage of the technological changes. So we have to do a lot of environmental scanning. If you remember, part of our environmental scanning is technology. That relates to the way our customers do. So if we have a diversified portfolio,
and
business.
we get
So
blindsided
incorporate
by
that into our strategic
technological
plans.
change.
We also
Hopefully, not
diversify
all of our portfolio will be
which, if it's
blindsided.
related,
And if we
right,
have a
and we're staying
related
for technological
diversification
changes,
of our
the related
portfolio,
is
most of
easier
the
to
technology
manage the whole
that relates to
portfolio
one
in relation
part
to
of that
changing
diversification
technology.
relates to
If
all
it's
of
really
it. So we
diversified,
can
it
really
becomes harder
focus our
to
attention.
do
Because if we're looking around the world,
environmental
we have
scanning,
technological
especially for
changes
the
happening in
technology,
almost
because
every
they're
realm, in
so
medicine,
rampant in
and
today's
information
marketplace.
science, and
We also need to learn how to
entertainment
change,
and
how to create
communications.
an environment
So just
that
a ton of
not
different
only
changes
is
going
able
on,
to change,
and
but
through our
embraces
scanning
change.
in a
Components
related,
are,
diversified
core
portfolio,
abilities.
we can
Companies
better
must
manage
also
that,
manage
that
innovation and foster
situation,
innovation and
and
create
then
an
we're better at our
environment
strategic
that
planning.
fosters innovation.
We also need to learn how to manage change on a regular basis, especially incremental change. That can be one of our core competencies as a business. Is we are really good at managing change, and especially if we're in a dynamic environment, that must be one of our core competencies. We also must be able to manage innovation, and not only manage innovation, but encourage and foster innovation. In other words, we want to create an environment in which innovation thrives.